In the darkness of the night, when the cameras were turned off, the lights were extinguished, and the shooting team departed, there was that silence that comes before a storm. Marilyn Hall sat on her couch, her face the same helplessness that arises in a mother's heart when she feels ashamed of her son. A rerun of Love and Marriage Huntsville was playing on TV, but this time it wasn't just a show, it was a painful reality. Only one scene kept coming back to Marlene's mind, the moment she said to Martell, "Son, I can't make excuses for you anymore." This sentence was nothing less than a sword to Martell. He was used to the world explaining itself to him. But when his mother showed him the mirror, his pride began to crumble. On the other hand, ArionneCurry gasped when he saw the clips on social media. Marlene's name was trending. Thousands of people were commenting that Martell's mom is telling the truth now too. Arionne's hands started shaking. She immediately went on Instagram Live, anger on her face, tears in her eyes, and the bitterness in her voice that hides helplessness. "I'm not the woman everyone thinks I am. I loved Martell, but he used me." Her words were full of emotion, but the gap between truth and self-deception was clear. Comments began to pour in, some sympathetic, some mocking. "You broke Melody's house. Now you're the one who's to blame. Marlene is right. You're just a show." But there were also those who called her a victim. That was the beauty of reality TV. There is no such thing as a complete villain. No such thing as a complete innocent. When Arion saw that Melody's name was coming up again and again, he became even more angry. Melody is no angel. She is also human, but everyone portrays her as a hero. There was that bitterness in her voice that a defeated woman feels a woman who believed in a man's promises. And then those promises slipped from her hands like sand. Meanwhile, MelodyShari didn't say a word. She didn't post any videos, nor did she give interviews. But silence sometimes becomes the loudest scream. Melody announced her company's new project, Rise and Rebuild, designed to make single mothers financially independent. People were shocked. While everyone was trying to drag her into the drama, she was talking about growth. That was the difference that had always existed between Martell and Melody. She was the builder, he was the destroyer. The media immediately pitted the two against each other. On one side, Arionne's tears, on the other, Melody's smile. On the one hand, Martell's defense. On the other, his mother's silent displeasure. Martell was caught in the middle of it all. The one who had always considered himself the alpha male was now trapped in a circle where there was no power, no respect. He called his mother, but Marlene didn't pick up. He texted Arion, "Why did you go live? You made everything worse." But Arion only wrote back, "I will not hide what you did." It was the moment Martell realized he had lost everything he had ever been proud of. Honor, family, fame, everything. He sat by his son Maverick's room, listening to the sounds of sobbing from behind the door. Maverick listened to his grandmother Marlene's words on the TV and kept saying, "Dad's not bad, right?" It was a child's innocent attempt to convince his father of his innocence. But for Martell, the question became a sword. When Marilyn saw all this, her heart was filled. On the one hand, she prayed for her daughter-in-law Melody. On the other hand, she yearned for her son. But how long can a mother remain silent? She spoke to her friends at the local church. "I thought time would heal everything, but time took my son from me." People consoled her, but the exhaustion on her face did not change. She realized that if she had stopped Martell at the beginning, she had not remained silent about his wrong decisions, then perhaps things would have been different today. This sense of guilt hurts a mother's heart more than any punishment. Word had spread throughout the city of Huntsville that the whole family is falling apart. In restaurants, in beauty salons, everywhere, people were talking about the same topic. Melody is still honorable. Arion is being cruel to herself. Martell needs treatment, not more excuses. Even the show's producer, CarlosKing, said in an interview, "This is no longer a drama. It is the result of human decisions." The paparazzi were standing outside Martell's house. He got into his car and drove away quietly. But a reporter shouted, "Martell, are you ashamed of your mother's statements?" Martell's face softened for a moment. Then he said, "My mother has the right to her opinion." This was probably the first time he showed acceptance instead of being defensive. But this gentleness did not last long. As soon as he reached home, he started taking out his anger on Arion. "You made a fool of me and made a spectacle of me in front of everyone." Arion shouted, "I didn't make a spectacle of you. You made a spectacle of yourself." The argument between the two escalated to the point that the neighbors called the police. But when the police arrived, both of them closed the door and remained silent. The cameras were outside, but inside there were only the sounds of a falling relationship. That night, Melody put her children to bed and quietly sat by the window and prayed, "Oh God, protect my children from this war. Don't let the poison that comes from the mistakes of adults enter their hearts." Her tears did not fall, but the moisture in her eyes held the strength that is found in people who are patient. This was the moment when Melody decided she would no longer be a part of Martell's story. She would write the new chapter of her life herself, without any drama, without any explanation. Martell decided to tell his side of the story. A popular podcast, Urban Unfiltered, invited him. His face was confident, but his eyes told a story of broken dreams. The podcast host asked a straightforward question, "Martell, do you believe that you let your mother, your children, and Melody down, all three?" There was a moment of silence. Then Martell spoke. "I'm human. I make mistakes, but I'm not a villain. The media has portrayed me as a monster." The host then asked, "So was the relationship with ArionneCurry a mistake or love?" Martell bowed her head and said, "Maybe I don't know myself. What was love in a moment became a wound over time." The sentence went viral. Comments began to pour in on social media. "Now you realize? It's too late. Melody won by staying silent, and you lost by speaking." Martell thought he would save face by explaining, but every word made him more vulnerable. Meanwhile, ArionneCurry's situation was different. The media also offered him to tell his truth. He gave an interview on a YouTube channel. There was makeup on his face, but the fatigue inside did not hide. "Everyone misunderstood me. I never wanted to ruin anyone's life, but Martell made me promises, showed me dreams. And then one day it was all over, like I never existed." Her words stirred sympathy in the hearts of the audience. But then what always happens happened. People started calling her a clout chaser. Hate comments on every video, every post. Her business started to close. Brands canceled deals. One night she cried on Instagram Live, "You all say I'm a liar, but you don't know what I've been through. I fought against the world for one man, and he destroyed my world." These were not the words of Arion, but of a broken dream. Marilyn Hall, whose tongue had been silent for years, was now speaking. In church, in women's groups, she would say the same thing. If we mothers had taught our sons in time, then no Melody's heart would have broken, nor would any Arion have cried alone. He agreed to be interviewed for a TV show. His goal was no longer to save Martell, but to show the truth to future generations. During the interview, he said, "I spoiled my son a lot. I thought he was a man. He would know what was right. But no, when love and pride come together, a man becomes blind." He agreed to be interviewed for a TV show. His goal was no longer to save Martell, but to show the truth to future generations. During the interview, he said, "I spoiled my son a lot. I thought he was a man. He would know what was right. But no, when love and pride come together, a man becomes blind." These words spread like wildfire. People began calling Marilyn Truth Teller Mom. Some praised her, others called her Traitor Mom. But Marilyn knew that truth is never popular, but it is necessary. MelodyShari launched the Rise and Rebuild program. Dozens of single mothers attended the launch event, some of whom had been on reality shows themselves. Melody said on stage, "I didn't learn to run from my past. I embraced it. If I can fall, you can rise too." The phrase resonated with the public. At that moment, the media dubbed Melody the Phoenix of Huntsville. Phoenix of Huntsville. The woman who rose from the ashes. That same day, Martell's phone rang. The news alert was, Martell watched the news in silence, then turned off the TV and sat down by the window. His face had the bitterness that arises between regret and jealousy. "I was the one who made him known, and today he is an empire himself." This feeling began to break Martell. MelodyShari's new company invests $1 million in Huntsville. Time passed. Martell's sponsors, business partners, even friends began to drift away. Those who once came to his house no longer even picked up the phone. Martell's lawyer warned him. Now he couldn't even speak, couldn't even keep quiet. This was the imprisonment that is called loneliness after fame. One day he went to his mother's house. The door was opened by Marlene, a gentle smile on her face, but a question in her eyes. "Son, what are you looking for now?" "Mom, just a little peace. If you say anything against your mother or Arion on social media, you could be sued." Marlene pointed to the sofa. "Sit down. But remember, peace is not found in one's mother's house, but in one's heart." The phrase echoed in Martell's chest. He knew there was no shortcut left. On the other hand, Arion took a temporary break from social media. She closed her account and went to live with a friend. One day she was standing in front of the mirror and said to herself, "Since when have I been a part of someone else's story? Maybe it's time to write my own story." This was the moment when Arion chose a new path for herself. She joined a women's entrepreneurship course. People laughed, but she didn't care. She knew that quiet, hard work was enough to regain respect. One day at church, Marilyn gave a speech to a packed hall where the faces of mothers and sons were serious. "I have seen how a mother's silence destroys a family. If you teach your sons to love, teach them to be responsible. Otherwise, they will one day destroy someone else's life and destroy themselves." One day at church, the entire hall fell silent. Tears welled up in Marlene's eyes, but she wasn't crying, she was breaking free. That day, she forgave herself. Several weeks later, Martell began to take her mother's words to heart. She made a video simple, without any fancy studio. "I made a lot of mistakes. I hurt the people I loved. But now I'm learning to live truthfully. Whether the world forgives or not, I want to forgive my mother, Melody, and most of all, myself." The video garnered millions of views as soon as it was uploaded. People were wondering, is Martell really changing? Is this a new beginning or another drama? Whatever it was, for the first time, Martell's words sounded sincere. When the truth is told, relationships change, faces change, and sometimes even people themselves change. Marlene, Martell, Melody, and Arion, for people, for stories, but one center: love and regret. The storm in Huntsville had passed, but its scars remained in every heart. One morning, the sun came in through the window, and Marlene drank tea for the first time with a slight smile. After many months, there was peace in her house. The TV was off, the phone was silent, and only one feeling in her mind: "I did my duty." The church people now looked up to her with respect. The woman who had once been called Mother Martell had now become Mother Truth-Telling. A young woman came up to her after church and said, "Mrs. Hull, your words have changed my husband. Now he makes time for his daughter." Tears of joy welled up in Marlene's eyes. She thought to herself, if someone else learns from my mistake, then perhaps my suffering is not in vain. On the other hand, ArionneCurry had quietly begun to change her life. She was no longer the same. She had distanced herself from the world of social media and stepped into the real world. She now owned a small business called Aurora Beauty Studio. This was the place where people once laughed at her in an interview. Arion said, "I learned that respect comes when you start to know yourself, not to define yourself by a relationship. I am no longer part of anyone's story. I am the protagonist of my own story." And today, the same people were standing in line to come and take time. The phrase went viral across the internet. People commented, "This is not the same Arion who was in Martell's shadow anymore. This woman is her own light now." Arion finally did what no one believed she could do. She turned her declining reputation into honor. MelodyShari's life was now calm, but not empty. She was busy expanding her company Rise and Rebuild across the country. In an interview, she said, "I didn't want my success to be tied to someone else's failure. I wanted my story to be a lesson, especially for women." This sentence became the heart of the entire show. Melody won not just with her words, but with her patience. Martell was no longer the man he had once been, full of pride. He was now a normal person who got up every morning, took the kids to school, and then went to the gym. One day he was sitting in the park. The kids were laughing on the swings. Melody was coming from afar, coffee in hand. For a moment, time stood still. No past grievances, no bitterness of words, just silent respect. Melody said, "Are you okay?" Martell said, "Maybe now." "And you?" "Me too." That's all. They both smiled and went their separate ways. This wasn't the end, it was the beginning. A few months later, Marilyn recorded a video message. The video was posted on her church's online page. Soft music played in the background, and she said, "I have seen a lot in my life. Fame, regret. But in the end, I have learned this. The truth is the only thing that gives you peace. Even if the world turns its back on you, but if you are truthful, God will never abandon you." The video touched the hearts of thousands of people. People kept writing in the comments, "This woman is truly a mother, a prayer made from wounds." Time passed. Huntsville was no longer that noisy. People learned from the drama. Gossip was replaced by emotion. Carlos, the show's producer, announced, "We're making a new season of Love and Marriage, Huntsville. But this time, the story will be one of learning, forgiveness, and growth. New season, new twist, new life." Melody took to the stage at the show's premiere and said, "This show is no longer just about our relationships. It's about all the women and men who get back together even after being broken. If you've ever fallen, remember, God never leaves you incomplete." Applause erupted. And at that moment, the final scene played on the screen. Martell, Arion, Melody, and Marlene, all four at the same ceremony, but in separate corners. Everyone's faces were calm. The camera slowly moved away and a voice echoed in the background. Sometimes the end is actually the beginning. If you felt something from this story, if you ever felt like you lost yourself in a relationship, then remember, every wound in life is a new lesson.